You know about the law of attraction. Yes. Well, I've been looking at the law of attraction, considering the law of attraction for many years. And today I want to bring where I've landed with it and hopefully provide some rich thought for you, a place to play with the law of attraction. Hopefully you can use what we talk about today as a jumping off place for you in your life. And it's likely that you've had some similar thoughts as I have. Hi, I'm Elaine Albert, and I am your host for Journey Back to Joy TV. One of the reasons I bring topics like this, the law of attraction, is because in our own journey to own our full joy in our lives, we need to look at lots of different things around creativity, around full expression of ourselves, using our voice, learning what it means to own our wisdom, and how to do some discerning along the way with so many things that are being brought to us today and have been for decades in the field of personal and spiritual development. So I just want to talk a little bit I'm going to talk around this subject. I'm going to give some stories in my own life. And then if you are live, I welcome you to stay on for live conversation after this show ends. Also, if you are live, you will not see the images that I'm dropping in on the edit. So you may want to come back and see this later because I have quite a bit of imagery that I'm going to be giving today. So I went back and watched that very well-known documentary, The Secret, in preparation for today. And why did I do that? Because I wanted to see where I am 16 years after that movie was produced. Of course, when it came out, gosh, I watched it several times. I even invited groups of people over to my home so we could watch it and discuss it together. This whole topic about the law of attraction has been a part of my life since I can remember. It actually really began for me many, many years ago. And I'd see now the work that I am doing with women in my groups has a lot to do with this conversation. So I'm someone who has long led vision board workshops. I don't even know how many of those I have led over time. And of course, in my own life, I have used them as a manifesting tool. And you know what I'm talking about. You go in and snip out images of things that you want to create in your life, you stick them on the board, and then you do what you do with it. Some people end up hiding them away and forgetting about them. Other people bring them out years later in reference to what has occurred in their lives. So I just want to touch briefly on some experiences that I have had personally, and then we'll move on. So years ago, I created a couple of different vision boards. And one was where I had this very large camera lens right in the center of my vision board. I like to fill up the vision board with all images in the background and then go back and add a very few words in there. But I'm always intuitively feeling for what is the image that needs to go on the board, as opposed to, oh yeah, I want to go to Italy, let me stick a picture on. I'm going for what does my soul feel drawn to, and let the images appear out of the magazines in that way. So for some reason, I had this large camera lens right in the center of my vision board. It was only several years later, as I was working on my graduate degree and making that decision that neuroscience was something I wanted to focus on, and thus became a neurofeedback practitioner. The first piece of equipment that I began working with, and I didn't make this connection until sometime later, was called Lens, L-E-N-S, and all capitalized. When I went back and looked at that vision board and saw that camera lens right in the center of it, I was like, wow, something in me knew something was coming. Similarly, I had an image on the board of, all you could see was this dock on a lake and these two sets of legs dangling off the side. And one appeared to be a parent and one a child. And I just had to have that image on my vision board. Well, when I was in graduate school, I had the privilege of working with Kim John Payne, who wrote Simplicity Parenting. He happened to be at our Waldorf school implementing a program for parents to work with the children there, and I was on that committee. So Kim and I got to know each other over that 2-year period, and I ended up asking him to be a graduate advisor for my graduate team when I was working on my degree. So had done that image on my vision board years later. Well, at the time that Kim and I were working together, he was working on this Simplicity Parenting book. And lo and behold, the book was released, and that very same photo of those legs dangling off the side of the deck, of the dock, was his book cover. That just blows my mind to this day. Another one would be the image that I put on the vision board of the kind of house that I wanted to move to. It had a lot of glass on the backside, and you could see through the glass to the backyard. Well, I actually looked at the vision board the other day, and the image looks like a backyard, but it also looks like it could be a pond back there. I mean, the shape of it and everything looks like the pond behind our house, and we do have all glass looking out there. So this kind of thing happening is uncanny, and I don't tend to look at vision boards quite the same way as others do. I don't think we're putting the images on the board in order to create what we want. I think it's already in the ethers, and we are drawing from that collective energy that runs through our lives, and something intuitively connects with something that's coming. So however you tend to sit with that theory, it's just one piece that I have learned to use over time, is how do I tune into that highly intuitive space and then draw forward what already exists. So there was also a collage made by my son Rand, and if you've been listening to my show or know me, you know that I lost my son Rand in 2004. But before he died, he had created this amazing collage. It's just stunning. And it was a collage he created about himself that he used to apply to a private high school. So I didn't notice it until, I guess, maybe several months ago, that in his image, he had a bunch of images on there, but in his collage is this man who looks like a miner or a mountain climber. And this man has walked into a cave holding a lantern. So it's dark all around, but the lantern is providing the light in this collage. Well, in my work with women today, I often talk about the power of going into the cave. That it seems dark when we're in there because we're doing some very powerful, deep work when we go into that cave, the way I describe it. And what I always say is that there is light in the cave, and that if we can hold a lantern of light up, we can actually see what's written on the walls in our own cave. So I didn't make that connection that his collage from 20 years ago was actually showing up in my own work that I'm doing today. So I think these kinds of things tend to have reverberations. If we go back, we reread our journaling, we look at images that we've created in the past, and we begin to see that there are things that are setting out in front of us for us to follow. All right, so the secret. In watching that, and it's all about the law of attraction, I was at the same time watching this movie back in 2006 when it came out, 2007. I was also going to a number of Abraham workshops. If you know about Abraham and Esther and Jerry Hicks, Esther was channeling an entity called Abraham and is still doing that work today. You can certainly find lots of work by Esther on YouTube. And Tom and I were very interested in what is being offered to us from other voices that are in our energy field that we can tune into and learn from. So we were going to a number of these workshops. Okay, I had heard that Esther and Jerry and Abraham were on The Secret, that they were in the movie. Well, I watched the movie and they were not there. And yet I kept hearing people talk about, oh, did you see that Abraham was part of this movie? Well, in my version, they weren't there. And then I found out what had happened. Here's the backstory on what happened with Esther and why they ended up being cut out of this film. So a lot of the work that is presented in The Secret, not all, but a lot of the work that they're talking about as a backbone to the law of attraction came from the work that Esther and Jerry and Abraham were presenting. And in fact, the producer, Rhonda, who created The Secret, had approached them and said, can I come and film you? I'd love for you to be in this movie called The Secret. I'm actually going to be asking other people to be a part of that. So Rhonda brought her team onto a cruise with Abraham. And Abraham talked about the law of attraction and the way that this being from another dimension was bringing through this information about what the law of attraction is all about. So this went on for days. They were filmed in front of a green screen. And then 200,000 copies of that went out, and some people were able to get a copy. But as it turned out, Rhonda came back to them and said, would you consider changing our agreement, our contract? Because I want to promote what we've done with this film, but I can't do it because we don't own the intellectual property. So you have a choice, Esther and Jerry. You can release your intellectual property to me and we'll widespread market this film, or you can be omitted. Well, the way that Esther and Abraham and Jerry talk about a situation like this is always go for what goes downstream. If you're going upstream with what you're creating, you're doing it the hard way. So what is the most downstream thing that you can do? And they ended up deciding that suing wasn't an option, making a big fuss about it wasn't an option, but it was clear to them that they were not going to turn over their IP. So they were eliminated from the film. And then what Esther goes on to talk about that occurred with this movie, The Secret, is that the secret remained a secret. And the way she discusses it is like this. A big part of Abraham's message is that we are co-creating, that we are in partnership with something much greater than ourselves, and that we are bringing forward that energy and that ability to be in touch with that guidance if we choose to. What's discussed in The Secret is a different way of looking at it. They're talking about the universe, but they don't talk about guidance, and they don't talk about the personal way in which we can be connected to that guidance, which to Esther was that by eliminating Esther and Jerry from the film, they actually kept the secret a secret. That really the motivational force behind the law of attraction is this connection with something that Esther and Jerry calls source energy, which is certainly where I land. Okay, one of the big pieces that they want you to take away from The Secret is that, and it's said in the film, you can do, be, and have anything that you desire. So for me, that was always a thing that I was looking at, thinking about, and wondering how to make sense of, because obviously I wasn't getting everything that I desired in my life, and yet I was working very diligently to change my state of being, to upgrade myself, to raise my frequency so that I could match the energy of what I wanted to create. And obviously those things were also happening, i.e. my vision boards. Things were actually coming true that I was resonating with at a certain frequency. So what I began to really think about was, all right, so what's in the way of creating anything I want to be, do, or have? And is this even a working philosophy for me? So I had lots of conversations about this with my longtime mentor, Brad Brown, and we often ended up on different sides of the conversation. He said that some of my thinking was very magical and that I was mistaken, that trying to envision my way forward was not all there was to the story. So I think over time, I began to agree with him and see things in a different way. I want to also say that, little side note, that all the way back in the 80s, end of the 80s, I was reading about visualization and practicing it. So my very, very first book into that arena was by Shakti Gawain, Creative Visualization. I loved that book, and I read it one day, very short book, you can still get it. And I decided to take one of her exercises and apply it. So I did. And that day, I took her technique of placing your desire into a pink bubble, really feeling it, visualizing what it is that you want, and then setting it free to the universe to create along with you. Okay, did that. Later that day, I went to my landlord, who was also a realtor, and I had to let him know that I was moving out of the apartment and that Tom and I were looking for another place to live. I was pregnant and it was time to expand. And so he said to me, okay, well, how about we jump in the car and I take you to a house that I have just recently pulled on. I haven't even put it on the market yet, but I've just recently gotten it from the woman who passed away, and you might be interested in this house. Well, to backtrack a moment, in that little pink bubble visualization that I did what I tend to always do, which is not just to visualize, but let the message come back to me. Like, what is being pulled towards me or magnetizing to me? And I just saw this brief image of crisscross windows, old windows that have the separations of the glass panes, these crisscross windows. So I just let that go, and up into the universe it went in my pink bubble. And here I am with Vernon. He's saying, let's go look at this house. We jump in the car, we drive across town, we get out, go into the home, and it was kind of a mess, not the kind of home you would naturally move into, but with a renovator husband, I thought, this has some possibility. And I'm walking around kind of looking at the space. And all of a sudden I look up and realize that every single window in the house had a crisscross. So I had chills all over my body, and I thought, this is our home. So that's part of following that law of attraction aspect, is notice when you're in the flow and something is coming towards you. All right, so that was a kind of a manifestation, but also a pulling forward of what was coming in my future. And it was a fun story. We ended up moving in the house, renovated the whole thing. It was an amazing place to live. So this whole thing about, do I get to have, be, and do anything I desire? Here's where I began to part ways with some of the stuff that's going out in the marketplace about law of attraction, because it's being used in lots of ways to attract customers, to market programs. You just need these 3 simple steps of the law of attraction, and you can build a multi-million-dollar empire, that sort of thing. I wince when I see those things, because I believe that the law of attraction is being used in a capitalistic way that feels on some level manipulative and really not in co-creation with source energy. That's my perception of that. And I've been watching it for years. And I see people lay down their credit card for programs over and over, wishing for the magic to happen for them. So I do think that there are programs that are beneficial and that can help people get closer to what I call the real law of attraction. Here's an example. Years ago, Tom and I have been in this conversation about law of attraction for a very long time, before it was called the law of attraction. But he ended up buying a program that was about real estate. He took some of the last money that we had and purchased this program, and it had this really great message in it. And it was about, and we've used the byline that we created from that program ever since. So the idea was, the metaphor was that there is this ship, and that there's a crew at the bottom of the ship on the lowest deck, and they are shoveling coal into that engine, getting it to run. At the top of the ship, of course, and is that captain who is giving commands to the entire list of employees on that ship, including that crew down below. So the crew down below being the subconscious mind, the captain on the top of the ship being the conscious mind. So the conscious mind telling the subconscious mind what it wants to create. So we have had this saying for all this time: the crew is always coming through. The crew is always coming through. So when we get into really hard times, we would remember that. And what do we mean by that? What we mean by that is that whatever it is that you're getting, whatever life is delivering to you, there is a way through. It may not look the way that you desire. It may not have all those pieces in your visualization about what it is that you want. But what I know I can trust is that what I get is what I need. So important for me to do the asking, ask for what I want, ask for what you want, be willing and open to receive it. That's critical. And then, of course, surrender the results. So all part of the law of attraction. Where we get tripped up is crossing over this kind of invisible line that I think we don't hear about very often. And that invisible line has to do with the domains in which we live, okay? We live in a very physical 3D world where we have access to 4D, 5D, etc. But we are not that energy, and we do not have control over what we do, be, and become 100%. Right? We don't have 100% control over that. The law of attraction says, well, if you can just raise your energy high enough, you can achieve all of that. Well, good luck with that. We are human, and we're going to find that some of those magical things do occur, like they had with my visualization, the pink bubble, and my things on my vision board, and hundreds of other things that have occurred in my life. But when it comes down to really talking about the things that are hard, that we have experienced, the things that occur in our lives, that are things that we would not want, be, or desire. And of course, at the time that I was beginning to listen to The Secret, and I was working with Abraham and all of those philosophies, what I was digging for is, what is it all about when I get what I don't want? That's what I wanted the answer to. I got the part about I can create and manifest. However, when those hard things happen, when our best friend gets a ovarian cancer and dies, when the recession occurs, and lots and lots of people lose their life savings, including, that's what happened to us. When we're projecting a healthy, happy family and we lose a son to suicide, as I did. So I wanted to know, where in the midst of this law of attraction do these things sit? And what I came to the conclusion of, and actually why I wrote my book, Beyond the Why, of loss is because I was interested in discovering the bigger picture. I wanted to relay what I was learning, but also take myself through the process of writing to really qualify what it is that I see about how life works when I'm busy wanting what I want and I get what I get. And for me, it's all about the humilification process. That's what Tom and I call it, the humilification process. When we ask for what we want and we go for it, and we go about living our lives, and we get some of what that is, we get that good stuff, but then we have the big things happen, like a major loss of some kind. How do we make sense of that? Did I, in fact, cause my son to take his life? That was a big question underneath, because if what you think about, you bring about, which is one of the pieces of The Secret, and if it's true that what you focus on manifest, which is a part of The Secret, then what part of me was focusing on manifesting the loss of my son? And it got all wrapped up in feeling guilty and responsible and regretful and ashamed, actually, on a very deep level about my part in what had occurred. So I needed to go on that deep, deep journey for myself, and perhaps you do too, around the things that have occurred in your life that you're sitting and wondering, hey, did I create that? Did I create my reality? How did I create my reality? And here's what I want to say about it at the end of the day. What I want to say is that in a situation like with my son, Rand, who was deeply loved by our family and was given all sorts of opportunities to experience life, to have his life, amidst other things that weren't as pretty as parents and kids, and we all know that as parents, but the ultimate way in which he was being held was in a very loving home. How do we make sense of what occurs? And I found that what I needed to do in this kind of thing with the law of attraction and manifesting your reality and all of that is I needed to take a step back and see that much, much bigger picture that is actually outside the human domain in ways that are difficult to describe, but to allow ourselves access to this greater, higher domain and to place ourselves in situations where we can learn about that, where we can open up to that in ways in which we get illuminated with pieces that we're allowed to see and have as human beings. So part of that humilification is learning that we are in control of just so much. And what is outside of our control and things that we do not want to be occurring, can we bow to them? Can we open our hearts and deeply surrender to what is actually occurring? And therefore, by doing that, open ourselves to a much richer journey than we may have been experiencing prior to that time. So for me, that is the rest of the story with the law of attraction, that we are offered this incredible deep dive opportunity to go back into those situations that we have shunned and pushed away and said that should never have happened to me. That's never what I wanted. I never imagined that. I never wanted that for myself. And to see what we're being called to in this moment in time. I had an interior visualization recently in which I was with a very deep and old part of myself that always got into obligation. And I was dialoguing with this part, and lo and behold, he reaches into a bag that had been pulling behind him as a heavy weight. And I'm seeing all this interiorly. He reaches his grubby, dirty hand into this bag he's been carrying, and he pulls forward something in his palm. And in that palm is this jewel, this multifaceted jewel. I have since come to realize that that multifaceted jewel who is offering me is exactly what I'm talking about today, is that capacity in our human domain to connect with the domains that are beyond who we are as human beings, and to co-manifest, to co-create all through the various things that occur in our lifetimes. And in that way, our journey becomes quite magnificent. And inside of that sorrow, there is an inexplicable and profoundly deep joy that can be unearthed and offered to us if we would but take it and receive it. So thank you for joining in today. I am delighted you were here. And if you're live, please stay on for conversation. I welcome you to come back on any Tuesday. I am right here with another show of Journey Back to Joy TV. I hope you have a most amazing day.